Shamu. So, we're going to move into the next part of this. This whole left-hand path thing that I've been discussing. So, yes, hi, Cat. Yes, Diva. Diva, I'm recording. So, we talked briefly, very briefly on Blavatsky. Because I could fill a whole year just talking about my hate for Blavatsky. I could hold a whole year of content just on that. So we talked briefly enough about it in the last video about what she saw, what she thought she saw with seeing Vamachara. And her idea of the beginning of, like, this idea of the left-hand path. Now, we don't really see the term used any further or evolve any further past the idea of the Dukpa or the evil sorcerer of the left-hand path. Ooh. Until about, I'm being attacked by a cat. Until about 1909. Where we get to talk about another evil person. Depending who you ask, evil. Depending who you ask, a genius. Hold on, this cat. That's right, we're going to be here talking about Aleister Crowley. Now, a lot's been said on Crowley, on both sides of the aisle. This video is not to address any of that. That is auxiliary to what we're discussing. Because out of all of Crowley's stuff, the thing that matters here is that we are looking at the evolution of the idea of the left-hand path. So in 1909, during his Algerian working, Crowley begins to formalize his doctrine around the abyss. The Adeptus Exemptus being one who, during the abyss working, either surrenders everything to become what is called a babe of the abyss, or refuses, armors his ego, and becomes what Crowley referred to as a black brother. This would be a left-hand path practitioner. The first that we see this, the first account of the Black Brothers of the Left-Hand Path, is within the Voice and the Vision, within the 12th Aether. And I'm going to just read it out. I have a bunch of quotes here on this work here, and we're going to be reading through them. And this is the meaning of the supper of the Passover, the spilling of the blood of the Lamb being a ritual for these dark brothers. For they have sealed upon the pylon with blood, lest the angel of death should enter therein. Thus do they shut themselves off from the company of the saints. Thus do they keep themselves from compassion and from understanding. Accursed are they, for they shut up their blood in their hearts. They keep themselves from the kisses of my mother Babylon, and in their lonely fortresses they pray to a false moon. And they bind themselves together with an oath, and with a great curse, and of their malice they conspire together. And they have power and mastery, and in their cauldrons do they brew the harsh wine of delusion, mingled with the poison of their selfishness. Thus they make war upon the Holy One, sending forth their delusion upon man, and upon everything that liveth. So that their false compassion is called compassion, and their false understanding is called understanding, for this is their most potent spell. Yet of their own poison do they perish, and in their lonely fortresses shall they be eaten up by time that hath cheated them to serve him, and by the mighty devil Choronzon their master, whose name is the second death. For the blood that they have sprinkled on their pylon, that is a bar against the angel of death, is the key by which he entereth in. So we begin to see, this is it. This is where we see the beginning of the idea of a left-hand path practitioner being extensively wrote. This is it. It starts with Crowley. Blavatsky misunderstood the term, put the idea left-hand path out there. Crowley, seeing that, disconnects it from its Indian roots, from its tantric roots, and says, this term, this thing you are trying to point at, Blavatsky, this is what it is. And as you can hear from that, he doesn't really have great words for it. Crowley then codifies this fork in the road for the Adeptus Exemptus. You either A, become a brother of the left-hand path, or B, a babe of the abyss. This is the canonical line that people will cite for the Thelemic redefinition of left-hand path. It is the refusal to cross the abyss. That is the Black Brother trajectory. As we see in the writings, the Adeptus Major obtains a general mastery of practical magic, though without comprehension. The Adeptus Exemptus, complete in perfection of all these matters, he then either A, becomes a brother of the left-hand path, or B, is stripped of all his attainments and of himself as well, even of his holy guardian angel, and becomes a babe of the abyss, who, having transcended the reason, does nothing but grow in the womb of its mother. It then finds itself. A Magister Templi, whose functions are fully described in Liber 418, as is this whole initiation from Adeptus Exemptus. See also Aha. His principal business is to tend to the garden of his disciples and to obtain a perfect understanding of the universe. He is a master of Samadhi. So this is the path that Crowley puts out for Thelema. Adeptus Major, Adeptus Exemptus, Magister Templi. You can mess up going from Major to Exemptus, in which you hit this crossfire, where you, instead of dissolving your ego, instead of surrendering to the divine, again a theme that we see within the Bhakti, within the Vamachara traditions, of the surrendering of the divine, terrorful power and terrorful fearfulness. If you don't do that, and you cling to yourself, and you cling to your self-identity and your self-individuation, then you fail to cross the abyss and you become this black brother. Now, this has already hit 8 minutes, so we are going to continue this as well in another part. But here is where we see the beginning of the dogma of the left-hand path. 1902, 1909, Crowley's Algerian working, Crowley writing on the Babe of the Abyss, on the Abyss Crossing. This is where a lot of elements that we are going to identify in this kind of journey, a lot of this comes from how Crowley described a black magician, or a black brother of the left-hand path. I have more quotes. They're going to go into the next one. I think y'all will find some of these pretty interesting to hear some of the stuff Crowley has to say here. I will be right back after a drink. Shamu.